This is called Salt.
Thank you very much. This is the one I should speak into? Yes. Cool. I know that maybe, can anyone hear me? Cool, okay. In the meantime, I'll just gesticulate wildly. It's very nice to be back. Hello. I write music about landscapes, so all these songs are inspired in some way by being in different types of topographical situations. I'm very interested in like what it's like, or like why it might feel different to be, why you might feel exhilarated on top of a mountain, or claustrophobic in the middle of a tunnel, or exhilarated or disoriented in the middle of an open field. And so I've sort of traveled around the country for the last 15 years or so, writing, using that as an excuse to write music about that sort of thing. Here's a newer one of those. This is called The Machine in the Garden. And for lack of a better explanation, it's about plants growing up through the cracks in the sidewalk. Is that any better? Yes, cool. I'll continue speaking at this voice until someone yells at me. So. That is a song from what until very recently was my most recent album, and is not anymore. So that's good, I guess. That album was called, it still is called, we can still talk about it. It's called The Trouble with Wilderness, and I wrote it because I kind of found that I had been like running around the country writing music about all these different landscapes, and very much by accident, writing a lot about the same kind of place over and over again. Like I had all these songs that were about places that don't have people in them. I had a lot of songs about like oceans and wilderness areas and national parks, and not a lot of songs about the types of places that people kind of tend to interact with and come across in their day-to-day lives. And then I began to worry that by doing that, I might be reinforcing an idea about what nature is and where we might find it that is not actually the one that I believe in, which is, of course, that the tree in your backyard is every bit as wild and interesting and worthy of wonder as one that is in the middle of a national park. So I chose this as a sort of like guilty writing prompt to write 12 songs that would be about moments of overlap between the built and natural environments where it's sort of hard to tell what is natural and what is not. So that's the first song on that album, and this is another one. This is called Anorak. And it's about a rainstorm in a city and how a change in like the thickness of the atmosphere can alter your sort of spatial understanding of how far away things are. Or whatever you want. It's instrumental songs. amazing piano. You guys are lucky to have this. It's time now to talk about the new product. This is my new album, which came out last week. It's called Bearings, and I don't know what to tell you about it. It's a record. You can have it in this format, in CD format, or the invisible formats. The conceit behind this record was I kind of wanted to break my habit of, my normal compositional process is to wildly overthink everything for years and years and years and years, and then go and record it, and then be like mostly unsatisfied. And so what I decided to do this time was, I was thinking a lot about how I sort of approach and engage with and understand landscapes in real life, which is, like almost always by kind of moving around them and kind of appreciating from different angles, and then kind of adjusting my understanding as I get a new kind of like angle of light on them. And I thought a clever way to honor that in the compositional process would be to book a bunch of studio time and then show up in the studio with a whole notebook full of, like all of the places and ideas and concepts and landscapes that I wanted to write about, and no music pre-written. And I would have to kind of like figure it out all on the fly based on like moving around the piano to kind of find the song the way that you would find, like the way that you would orient yourself in a landscape by kind of like moving around and triangulating and all that. I was very satisfied with this system until I got there, and then it was completely terrifying. It immediately felt like I was wasting everybody's money and time. But it wound up great, and we got at least 12 songs out of it, which I'm very proud of and happy with. And this is one of those. It's the first song on the record. This is called Aerial. And it came about because I played a Dark Skies festival in northern Maine, where there's like almost no light pollution. One of the only places in the entire eastern United States where you can kind of see all the stars without influence. I was playing all my songs about, like cities and highways and forests and rivers and what have you, and like a 6-year-old kid was like, "Do you have any songs about the sky?" It didn't, but now I do. So this is one of those. So it's Ariel, not the font or the mermaid, but the concept. I'm gonna do another song from a new record now. This is one that I wrote about a place like relatively near. This is probably the audience that will understand this reference better than most. The third song on the record is called "The Museum of Everyday Life," which is inspired by the Museum of Everyday Life, which is in Glover, and one of my favorite buildings anywhere in America. I just think it's such a like beautiful concept to kind of like take things that you would, you know, ordinarily look right past or take for granted, and then kind of elevate them to, you know, like point out the ways in which they should be kind of like glorified and exalted and respected in a way that they wouldn't ordinarily. So the way I tried to do that was by like writing like the simplest song I possibly could, with like this like the barely a melody at all, and then somehow make it seem grand anyway. So that's what this is about. Whether or not you like the song, I urge you to go to Glover and check out this museum if you haven't been there. So I'm not an ambassador, but purely a recommender. An unanticipated problem with writing a fully improvised album is that then you have to learn all the songs in order to play them. So that's been a major part of my year, is figuring out what the heck I wrote. To pivot briefly back to the other album, this is one from that. I thought if I was going to write a whole record about places where it's hard to tell, you know, like where the built environment ends and where the natural environment begins, it would be important to include a song about gardens. which to me have always represented these interesting like moments of overlap where, like, human beings try to apply, right angles and straight lines and reason and order to all these organisms that really just kind of want to like blow up and explode everywhere and be in charge and take over everything. That tension has always been very interesting to me. So this song is about that. And the name of this song is This Rush of Beauty and This Sense of Order, which is a line that I stole directly from E.B. White. He wrote, he and his wife Catherine, this very really beautiful correspondence, which is all like weirdly well documented. And in one letter that he wrote to her, he was in New York and she was in Brooklyn, Maine. She was a very avid gardener, and he closed this letter to her with this very cute poem about gardens and gardening. And the last two lines of the poem are, not sun, not soil alone can bring to border this rush of beauty and this sense of order. And I stole that and it's the name of the song. Piano has a lot of muscle in it. I'm going to pivot dramatically and play a very soft song that is so new that it's actually not on any of these albums. So if you like it, you can never hear it again. But it's called Obad. It's not about a landscape. The name means a sad poem written about the dawn. But by the time I put it on a record, I'll figure out a way to make it about a landscape. I'll do a song now about I think I played it last time I was here, but it sounds really good in this piano, so you have to hear it again. This is a song about the Nashua River, which I'm sure many of you are familiar, but it starts in north central Massachusetts, just west of the towns of Fitchburg and Leominster. Winds through those are two old mill towns. It kind of sweeps south for a second, and it picks up a couple of tributaries, then shoots due north, enters New Hampshire, and it meets the Merrimack River in the city of Nashua, and then all that water kind of sweeps out to the ocean from there. And in the process of doing all this water sort of outlines the whole region in which I grew up and where all my family is from, and I've always felt very attached to the Nashua River for this reason. So the song is about that. Another interesting fact about the Nashua River, though, is that as recently as the 60s and 70s, it was bright orange. It was one of the most polluted waterways in the entire country. Sort of a national embarrassment. And today it's a federally designated national wild and scenic river. You can swim in it, you can kayak in it, it's beautiful. There are otters that scamper around. And this is almost entirely due to the work of one woman. Her name is Marion Stoddart. She's now 95 years old. And she really, really kind of did it all on her own. She founded one of the first watershed associations in the whole country. She spent decades mailing mason jars full of horrible water to Congress people. Really, really did amazing work, and we have her to thank for the Nashua in its current form. So, again, if you take nothing from this, go home and Google Marion Stoddart and visit the Museum of Everyday Life. And, yeah. But this song is called Nashua. That's an old song of mine that it's called "When You Are a Road," and that title comes from a Donald Hall essay, in which he says at one point, "Social welfare is magnanimous in New Hampshire only when you are a road." That sometimes works in New Hampshire, but never. I'm gonna do another song from Bearings. This is the first cover song I've ever recorded. So this is it's actually written by a guy who looks an awful lot like Donald Hall. So picture that. But this man's name is Charlie Parr. He's a really, really amazing fingerstyle, like country blues guitarist, based out of Duluth, Minnesota. But he travels all around, kind of like lives in his truck and like writes really, really beautiful music and plays it very compellingly. I've always found him very inspirational, even though we play totally different styles of music. And I sort of just like on my kind of for sound checks and stuff started playing this sort of version of one of his songs, which sounds nothing like the way he wrote it. And then when I went down to record these improv tracks for Bearings, the first thing we did was like set all the microphones up and just to make sure everything worked. The engineer was just like, "All right, play something." So I played this song by Charlie Parr, and it was like one of my favorite things we recorded. So it had to go on the album, even though it didn't fit the concept at all. And then Charlie was very sweet about kind of supporting it and endorsing it, and so anyway, hope you enjoy it. It's called 1922. Just imagine someone from Minnesota singing this. I've got, I think, 2 songs more for you, but thank you, before I forget to say so, to Northern Woodlands, to Elise and the whole staff, Nancy, Emily, everybody, and to the church, Amy, for putting this all together and for inviting me back. Like I say, I'm always wildly grateful for any excuse to get to come out this way. So even better when I can play a piano when I get here. So I hope to see you all again soon. I have a mailing list in the back if you would like to know when I will be back. I'm pretty good about using that judiciously. But also please come see me because I will sell you records or CDs or t-shirts. I think those are the only 3 things I sell. But also just nice to say hi. So yes, this next song is called Break. It's from an older album of mine called Salt, which is all about landscapes where you kind of can't depend on the ground being underneath you when you want it to be. So the way this is shaped is like First half of the album is all songs about like avalanches and earthquakes and places where these changes in the land come very hard and fast and absolutely and permanently. And then it sort of moves over the course of the album to being songs about like salt marshes and tidal rivers and beaches and places that are kind of like always changing in these subtle, like almost unknowable ways, but there's something kind of steady and dependable in how often they're changing and like in that kind of being in that sense of state of flux. So it's, a metaphor for like, learning to find ballast and stability even in a world where you kind of can't depend on, where the ground might be at a given moment. It's also a breakup album that I wrote about estuaries, so but this is a song from the front half of the record, so it's one of the angsty ones, and I hope you enjoy it. I've got one more song for you. Thank you once again for all coming out. How many of you have never seen me before? I was wondering what the interesting. Wow, okay, in that case, I'll probably play the song that I usually close with. There's a long story attached to this one, so if it was a majority return crowd, I would have not bored you with it. But this last song I wrote, I do a lot of artist residencies with like land trusts and conservation organizations and national parks, and so worked with a hiking trail a few years ago. It's one of these like side perks of writing music about landscapes that are sort of useful in ways that you wouldn't expect it to be to all these different groups. And this is a song I wrote on the weirdest one of those I ever did, which is a few years ago. I was the artist at sea on a research ship in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, which is weird for me because I write piano music about land, and sort of voluntarily walked into the situation where there was no piano and also no land. But the idea was very cool. The Oceanographic Institute that owned and operated the ship had begun this sort of pilot program where they had begun bringing like artists in all different media to kind of like come aboard different cruises with these research scientists and kind of like make work that would reflect what they were doing on board. So if you were like a scientist doing your work on the deck of the ship, collecting your data, there might be like a poet beside you kind of writing about that. So I was there to be that guy. However, it was sort of like early enough in this pilot process that they were still working out some kinks, and due to some sort of scheduling snafu, I wound up on a leg of the ship's journey that had no scientists on it at all, which I learned when I got there. The way this happened was the ship was in Vietnam, and there were all these huge team of scientists on this boat doing tons of work, all of which sounded wildly interesting. One day they all finished up and went home. And then a couple hours later, I arrived, and the crew and I sailed from Vietnam to Australia over the course of about a month, during which time I mostly threw up. And then we got to Australia, and then I left, and then a couple hours later, all these new scientists arrived and did a bunch of fascinating sounding work on the coast of Australia. So this is a very existentially challenging time for me because not only could I not do the thing that I was literally there to do, but I was also the only person on this entire ship that wasn't, like necessary in any way. Everybody else was a member of the crew. So it took me a little while to get comfortable, but I found it wound up being a bit of a blessing in disguise that I didn't have any science to write about, because I got to write about the experience of being at sea the way I would write about a landscape. And I don't know how many of you have been in a middle of the ocean, no sight of land situation, but it's nuts that I can't think of anything to compare to other than I have a song that I didn't play tonight about that I wrote the first time I ever drove across western Kansas, which is all about kind of how easy it is to feel disoriented and completely out of place and time in a place where there's no kind of landmarks or like anything by which to gauge your relative distance and speed. And this kind of felt like that times a million for days at a time. I was really fascinated because you stand on the deck of the ship and look out and it looks like Kansas, or it looks like a Rothko painting, right? Like big field of this color and a big field of this color and sort of hazy line in the middle. And it feels very still until you think about it for 1 second, then you realize like, oh God, like every part of this is moving in some way. Like the wind is blowing and the waves are moving and the current's going and that thing's moving and you're moving. And the idea that you can sort of stand in the middle of this riot of motion and feel even vaguely upright and oriented and like which way is what is a pretty magical feature of being a human being that I had never thought to appreciate before. So I wrote a lot of music about that, and this song, which is considerably shorter than the story I'm telling you about it, is called Landfall, and it's about the moment when the ship gets back into port, and this mode of orientation that I've just been describing has to kind of seamlessly snap back into the one you've had for your whole life on land, where you can kind of lean against the ground and reasonably expect it to behave in a certain way. I think that's all the information you need for this song. It's really, really nice to see you all. thank you so much again for having me back to Lyme, and I will see you all in like 2.5 minutes. Back at the table. Thanks, guys. This is called landfall. It's important data I left out.